job, Maria. That was awesome. Guys, I don't have a presentation or anything. I had actually asked Maria if I could put up a video of a customer saying nice things about me. She didn't go for it. But everything they said is true, Maria. You're one of a kind and a true partnership. Let me be the first person from Fortinet to formally congratulate you guys at Foreseeson SU. Amazing job, Maria, Brian. What a great event, and I'm glad to see everyone here, some of our partners. It's awesome. And thank you for letting Fortinet be a part of that. I really appreciate it. So I don't have any slides. I do have the pleasure of introducing, though, our next speaker. And that is Doug Santos, who's the Director of Advanced Threat Intelligence. You guys are in for a treat. Doug has, two sides to him. He's very technical, so he can go deep with you guys who want to go there, but he's also, very strong with a good sales acumen, so he can make people like myself and any of the other salespeople understand what he's trying to say here. So with that, I will pass this over to Doug, and thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
I think I'm gonna grab the podium.
Oh, okay, good.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me all right? Awesome. Thank you. Good morning, and thanks for having me here. I have the clicker here. I'm here to talk about one of the most pressing cybersecurity issues that I think today, which is the security of electric vehicle charging infrastructure, right? When most people think about EV security, they think about someone stealing a vehicle or, breaking it, but it's way more in-depth than this, right? We're talking about critical infrastructure that forms the backbone of our transition to sustainable electric transportation. So every time someone plugs their electric vehicle on a charging station, they're creating a trust bridge that connects the EV vehicle to the charging station, to payment processing systems and the cloud. So it's about the security of all this ecosystem. It's a tangled web of trust and cascading trust that connects all of that, right? So this isn't science fiction. There's been a lot of attacks that happen, a lot of vulnerabilities, and I'm here to cover some of that things with you. So a little bit about myself. I'm Douglas Santos, 25 years in cybersecurity, 10 of those working for Fortinet. Right now, I'm heavily focused on threat intelligence, threat research, and threat emulation. And I'm also driving threat intelligence, advancing threat intelligence as a whole. So I'm partnering with MITRE CTID, and we're looking at everything that is that's happening on the threat intelligence landscape, and understanding if there is the need to develop new tools, new standards, or new methodologies, so that every cybersecurity company can understand what threat intelligence is out there, how that relates to their environment, and what they need to do in order to, get their security level to a more mature level. I'm based out of Vancouver, Canada. So a little bit about our agenda. We're going to be covering the introduction and the components of EV charging. A little bit on the threat landscape. What are the vulnerabilities? What are the attacks that have already happened, and what they represent in terms of the cybersecurity of this specific part of the EV charging. Some security measures, right? Some best practices that can be done so that we elevate the cybersecurity of those interconnected systems, and specifically the EV charging stations, and some recommendations and future outlook on this. Just recently, we saw someone breaking a Tesla Model Y. It was done at Pwn2Own, which is a vulnerability research competition. So in 14 minutes, they were able to completely break a Tesla Model Y, and that was done via infected charging station. Right? So it's not just not theoretical, it's something that is happening, and it's happening because the security of these systems is lagging, right? So let's start with some background first, right? In 2020, the world sold 3.2 million electric vehicles. As someone was saying before, about 5% of car sales. But by 2024, that number reached 18.5 million. And by 2030, we're looking at 30 to 40 million cars. But it's not just electrifying cars, it's about redefining them as software-defined and connected platforms, right? So we know today that a simple electrical car carries 10 to 40 times more lines of code than a Boeing 787. So, and these vehicles are constantly connected to cloud platforms. They are receiving over-the-air updates, they're sending telemetry, and they're evolving like mobile devices on wheels, right? So this is where it matters for us. So every time, as I told you, we plug an EV into a charger, we're creating a trust bridge between the EV, the charging station, and all of the cloud platforms that does the billing and does the authentication and all of that, right? So each part must authenticate and trust the others, yet every connection and every component is a potential attack vector. So smart charging, vehicle to grid, and plug and charge, they all increase their capabilities and the possibilities, but they also open risks. Right, so if you think the automobile industry wasn't built with cybersecurity in its DNA, so they barely knew what cybersecurity was 10 years ago, but now we have this growing ecosystem of connected devices that can be turned into actual weapons, right? Now we're just seeing the price. We are running on a security debt when it comes to security charging. And we've seen 39% increase in cyber attacks and automotive smart mobility systems in just last year, right? So charging infrastructure is obviously becoming a part of the grid. Vehicles are becoming critical endpoints, and the threat landscape is evolving really, really fast. If we don't secure the trust bridges now, the EV evolution could come to a hefty security toll. So when looking at the interconnected web of tangled trust and cascading information that flows, we start with the charging station hardware, right? We have power electronics that manage the conversion and delivery of electrical energy. These include AC, DC converters, inverters, and sophisticated power management systems. And on those components itself, the US energy authorities have discovered backdoors on these inverters, right? So they were made to completely bypass the communication channels, and this is being used all over the place, right? And also we have the communication modules. Those are most likely being prototyped and delivered using Raspberry Pi. So Raspberry Pi is very useful for prototyping and designing, but they are not really production ready, right? So they're obviously not built with security in mind. So they usually have unpatched Linux kernels, misconfigured SSL TLS libraries, and poorly secure firmware update mechanisms. So we've seen them being used in low-cost commercial EV chargers as well. When thinking about the payment systems, they represent another critical attack surface. These systems handle sensitive financial data and must comply with PCI DSS standards, but they're often integrated with other charging security components that create other security concerns and vulnerabilities. We've seen cases where attackers could display fake payment pages or intercept payment credentials, or simply just stick in a QR code that will lead to another page where they can steal your information or just charge your credit card. But the network architecture is where things get really complex. So every charge station connects to cloud platforms through APIs that manage complex user authentication, billing, remote diagnostics, and sometimes firmware updates. These cloud platforms then connect to mobile applications in which users interact with, back-end management systems that operators use to monitor their networks, and increasingly, grid management systems for demand response and load balancing. But this isn't just a hub and spoke architecture. These systems are heavily interconnected in complex ways, with data flowing between vehicles, charging stations, and payment processors, energy management systems, and third-party service providers. So a vulnerability in any component can easily cascade to any other component within this tangled web because they inherently trust each other. And it's all, the communication is done with specific communication protocols that enable all of this. These standards are evolving, but they're not always secure by default. We have which is the most commonly deployed protocol globally for charger-to-cloud communications, is OCPP 1.6, which has significant security limitations, so much that a newer OCPP 2.0.1 resolves a lot of these standards, but the adoption has been slow. We also have ISO 15118, which enables secure vehicle-to-charger communication, but implementation varies across manufacturers. Not everyone is picking up. So let's talk about the threat landscape and attack vectors right now. At the top of the list, we have API vulnerabilities, and that's obviously understanding, not surprising at all, given the amount of API calls and interconnectedness that happens when it's a lot of API calls, and that can lead to poor authentication, which has already led to mass exploitation through API flaws. Then we have, obviously, authentication bypass attacks. These attacks often stem from design flaws. Most systems, and we've seen this more than once, they only verify credentials on the first call, but then yeah, it's okay. I already trust this guy. They don't keep authenticating every single call after the initial one. But that's not all, right? We have physical tampering. Those chargers are most likely than not on remote locations with publicly accessible from everyone, and they're not heavily monitored on the camera side, so there's no one actually looking at them to see if physical tampering is happening. Firmware exploitation as well, they're extremely dangerous because someone that can connect to a charger and change the firmware, they can possibly deliver malicious code to vehicles that are charging there. So they can hijack these vehicles, they can do a lot of stuff. And the impact is massive, right? So of these attacks, 75% of those cause service disruptions, and 59% have the potential to affect millions of devices. So those are systemic vulnerabilities, right? And if you think that someone can compromise, let's say, 20% of those chargers, they can pull enough energy to grind energy to a halt. So they can turn all of those chargers into power sink, so that a city or a town will not get energy for a couple of hours or sometimes even days, right? So let's talk about some real-world attack cases. The very first one was the Siemens Versi charge vulnerabilities. They were disclosed in a CISA advisory that exposed critical flaws on the design. So the Modbus, which is an OT protocol, was enabled by default, allowing anyone on the same network to actually connect to it and issue commands. So Modbus is a very well-known protocol and service in the OT space. So, and it's not secure by default at all. Anyone can connect to it and do anything they want. Then we have the Tesla breaking attack. They showed that they could inject malware into a Tesla through a charging station. So they compromised the charging station, they changed the firmware, and they changed the firmware in a way that once anyone would connect to a specific charger, it would immediately identify which car it was, and if it was a Tesla, they would deliver malware to it. We also have the case of David Colombo, a 19-year-old who gained access to over 25 Tesla vehicles worldwide, and it was done through a mobile app, was called Tesla Mate. So he breached into an insecure Grafana endpoint. This exposed the Tesla API token, so he could interact with the Tesla vehicle through that API token. So that gave him owner-level access. So he could unlock doors, track locationing, open garage doors. So just a stark reminder that those vulnerabilities are not just in vehicle, right, but the whole broader ecosystem. We also had the Schneider Electric EV Link vulnerabilities, where sensitive credentials were stored in clear text in 2025 within the firmware binaries. So a basic security failure that could impact chargers in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. And there was the most comprehensive case, the Pen Test Partners 18-month investigation into smart EV chargers. They found that account hijack vulnerabilities across 6 brands that exposed 2.9 million devices. So everything from weak API controls that could allow attackers to brute force serial numbers and take control, essentially enable them to lock in chargers, unlocking them, and even pushing malicious firmware. So let's talk about the impact of those vulnerabilities, right? Because understanding the consequences is key to prioritizing your security efforts. At the vehicle level, those threats go far beyond inconvenience. Remote vehicle theft is real. Attackers can unlock doors and start keyless driving without even touching the car. Privacy concerns are almost as just alarming. They can track movements, learn home and work locations, and build detailed profiles on drivers' routines. We've seen cases where attackers accessed energy consumption data, charging habits, and connected smart home devices. And through compromised payment systems, they can inject fake payment pages, as I've said, intercept credentials, and manipulate billing charges to victims for services they never rendered. And there's obviously an infrastructure level. That's where stakes escalate. Disruptions worsen range anxiety and can slow EV adoption, right? But the biggest concern is, as I said, grid stability, right? It ranks 9.5 out of 10 in our severity scale for a reason. So experts have warned that controlling just a handful of the superchargers, they could siphon 3 to 4 gigawatts of manipulated demand. The output of 3 nuclear plants could destabilize entire regions. And that will come for compromising, as I said, just a fraction of the urban charging stations. Obviously, there's the economic impact that ripples through everything. Direct losses from fraud and theft, loss of consumer trust, and delaying climate targets. Increased insurance costs and higher security expenses across supply chains. Obviously, the countries that ignore these risks may face competitive disadvantages in the global EV race. Some governments are already restricting some manufacturers over security concerns, as is understandable, and that creates trade barriers and supply chain disruptions. Now that hopefully everyone is scared enough, we can talk about solutions. Because all those threats are serious, but there's proven ways to reduce risks. So technical controls, we need to move beyond passwords to multi-factor authentication and centralized identity management. It's not enough to authenticate just once. We need to, every request must be verified and the tokens must be set to expire in an aggressive way. End-to-end encryption is obviously non-negotiable, both in transit and with data at rest. And there are standards already in place for this, right? Like the ISO 15118 and the OCPP 201. Manufacturers need to pick up and start implementing those standards, which will inherently make their products more secure. Obviously, network segmentation and inspection is key. Charging systems need to be isolated from other networks using firewalls and VLANs. In operations, remote secure updates are essential, obviously. Many chargers are remote, so updates must be reliable. And more importantly, we need to move to secure by design. So building protections from the ground up, DevSecOps practices go a long way in making sure that specific, easy-to-spot vulnerabilities are addressed right in the beginning. And obviously, vulnerability management, right? Regular penetration testing, coordinated disclosures, and fast response times. And obviously, we cannot stress enough the physical security aspect. We need to work more with tamper-evident hardware, secure installations, and protecting home networks where personal chargers reside. So a little bit about some of the emerging standards and regulations. So the industry and regulations, they are catching up on EV charging security, but not fast enough. So ISO 15118 is a major leap forward. So it allows the security of vehicle-to-charger communication with encryption, authentication, and features like plug and charge. but adoption is inconsistent, right? The vendors need to pick up. OCPP 2.0.1 does fixes a lot of gaps, specifically adding certificate-based security and security update, but it's not very well implemented, right? Only 22% of deployments use it today, but some projections put it by 65 by 2027. On the regulatory front, the UK now mandates security for public and home chargers. So they impose the need to use secure protocols, regular updates, and incident response. But globally, enforcement lags, right? So it's not a coordinated effort between countries. Some governments, as we've seen in the US, they're banning hardware from specific manufacturers because they found that there were backdoors in them, specifically inverters. But at the same time, NIST is crafting some EV cybersecurity framework. So creating standards and ways in which we can understand what are the most pressing issues and how to actually tackle them head on. So they offer practical, actionable security guidance, which is something that organizations can start applying now. But the most pressing issue here, I think, is global coordination. Charging networks cross borders, yet standards don't, right? Without international alignments, security gaps will obviously persist. And as I said, OCPP 1.6, which is heavily insecure, is powering 68% of deployments, right? And one of the worst thing as well is that 42%, they rely on proprietary standards. So each charger company may be doing their own thing with the protocols they developed or with the ways they think it's most, makes more sense for the business. So let's close with specific actionable recommendations because securing EV requires coordination across the entire ecosystem. So manufacturers, secure by design is non-negotiable. Building your DevSecOps pipeline into every part of the ecosystem, from architecture to deployment. Backing it up with internal testing, third-party pen tests, and coordinated vulnerability disclosure. But don't stop at your product, right? We need to collaborate across suppliers and partners. We have something in the industry called ISACs, which is information security. It's a kind of like an alliance of specific industry where they share threat intelligence. We don't have that for EV charging, right? So it's something that the industry needs to start developing, to sharing threat incident data, sharing specific standards, and working with them to advance the industry as a whole. Operators, we need continuous monitoring, incident response plans tailored for distributed infrastructure, and obviously regular staff training. Vendor security assessments are obviously critical, and contracts must include security and incident response requirements. Policymakers, they're already kind of doing their job. We need adaptive security regulatory frameworks that can keep up with technology, right? As it develops, we need to make sure that the policy is keeping up. As I said, threat intelligence and sharing is a must. There's not one ISAC for EV charging, so I think that developing one, and it will go a long way to make sure that the industry is more secure. So this was all made with public information. So those are a lot of the references I've used to do this presentation. And yeah, that was it. Thank you.